Welcome to another Big Apple Nibbles, where we take another small bite out of the Big Apple. This time we head to the Maritime Industry Museum. You can get there by the New York City subway system number 2 line, dropping off at the East 180th Street, then take the Bronx BX40 bus, which takes you straight to the museum. There, you'll head to the Maritime College and Fort Stuyvesant, which is part of the complex. And here's a map of it. You'll see it at the far end of the complex. The Maritime Industry Museum at Fort Schuyler is a non-profit organization and is chartered by the state of New York. It's a vast, sprawling museum you see here, and leave yourself several hours at least to see the museum. The mission of the museum is to educate the cadets of the Maritime College and the general public about the maritime industry and its role in the commerce and defense of the nation. It has 2 decks. In the A deck houses the evolution of seafaring, following the development of shipping from Cleopatra's barge to modern tankers and container ships. On the B deck houses the maritime training and their ocean line exhibits and the promenade, with a history of Fort Schuyler, the Hall of Maritime Training, and many wonderful and amazing ship displays. Some of the most interesting displays I found were the history of maritime industry, and we'll cover those that starts in the 1600s. In the 1600s, when the men of destiny, Columbus, Verrazano, Hudson, came upon the New World, New York was only one of many small Indian trading posts. But it was Hudson, exploring on behalf of the Dutch East India Company, who saw the magnificence of what the Dutch historian of the period would call as fine a river could be found, wide and deep, with good anchoring ground on both sides. Hudson's ship, the Half Moon, anchored in that river in 1609, and the crew, some Dutch, some English, bought oysters and beans from the natives on the island of what was called Manhattan. In time, Manhattan became a flourishing Dutch colony. The Dutch West India Company, whose purpose was to establish trade with the new land, appointed as Director General of the colony an energetic and strong-minded man who was later to become famous for having made what was perhaps the shrewdest real estate deal in all of history, Peter Minuit. Minuit sailed from Holland in December of 1625. Immediately upon his arrival in New Amsterdam, he set up a counting house and went to work to start regular trade flowing. The first shipment back to the homeland sailed out of the region in September 26, 1626. The new settlers imported livestock and tools for tilling the soil and trapping and shooting the region's many fur-bearing animals. Return vessels carried shipments of fur, wheat, rye, barley, oats, buckwheat, canary seed, beans, flax, and various kinds of timber. Realizing the need for small vessels to engage in trade with the West Indies and in New England, the Dutch began to build them in the new colony. Later, when the British seized New Amsterdam from Stuyvesant, they further expanded and developed shipbuilding in the port. Under Stuyvesant's leadership, New Amsterdam, by the mid-1650s, had become a quaint little Dutch seaport town, running from present-day Wall Street south to the tip of Manhattan. Stuyvesant's 17 years as leader of the Dutch colony came to an end, though, in 1664, when England's Colonel Richard Nicolls called on him to surrender. The old peg-leg soldier, outnumbered in arms and men, gave up peacefully, and Nicolls seized control of New Amsterdam and all of New Netherland without firing a shot. And so it was that New Amsterdam became New York in the September of 1664. The Dutch era of 55 years had come to a close, and that of the British began. Next, we'll head to the early 1900s. By the early 1900s, the need for the development of the Port of New York had reached a point where it was apparent that something had to be done soon if the port was to maintain its supremacy. Congestion at the existing port facilities was acute, and the larger ships that were being built only added to the problem. But the best minds in port and shipping affairs were working on a solution. The New York Dock Company had developed a large area of the Brooklyn waterfront, Bush Terminal had begun operation, and the city of Newark was constructing a marine terminal facility on the Newark Bay. Civic pride soared in October 20th, 1915, when the initial phase of Port Newark construction program was opened to public view. Predicting that full development would come in the future, Newark's Mayor Thomas L. Raymond eloquently commented that, "Before us lies a project that bids fair to make Newark one of the greatest commercial centers of the United States. Let it become the site of many manufactories, of busy ports and busy men." Port Newark soon enjoyed its first traffic. In 1916, the schooner A.J. West, carrying mahogany from Manila, unloaded its initial cargo. Port Newark's commercial development was delayed, though, because the area was not in the mainstream commercial freight traffic. At the onset of World War I, the federal government realized its strategic value and assumed operation, establishing an enormous shipyard there and one of the Army's largest supply depots. In the meantime, issues came to a head between New York and New Jersey when both states appointed commissions to study railroad freight rates to various parts of the port. The U.S. Interstate Commerce Commission in December of 1917 reported that historically, geographically, and commercially, New York and the industrial district in the northern part of the state of New Jersey constitute a single community. It was then charged the states with an obligation to study and solve the problems of their common port. Thus was set in motion a daring new concept of interstate cooperation on mutual problems. A joint commission on port and harbor development of the two states began its work in 1917 with America at war. At the end of 1918, the commission recommended the formation of a permanent interstate agency to carry out a unified program of port development. It was to be created by a compact between two sovereign states under the Compact Clause of the United States Constitution. The federal government had long designated the port as a port of New York for customs and other purposes, hence the Joint Commission recommended that the new agency be called the Port of New York Authority. Here we see the seal of the New York Port Authority established in 1921. So next we'll head to the 1920s. On April 8, 1921, a ceremony at the Great Hall of the Chamber of Commerce was of the state of New York, a compact that was signed between New York and New Jersey. The compact was a simple document. In its first article, the two states pledged their faithful cooperation in the future planning and development of the Port of New York. In the second article, they specified the area in which their joint interest lay, the Port of New York District, a roughly 25-mile radius circle centered on the Statue of Liberty. In the third article, the states created the means to implement their pledge of cooperation, the Port of New York Authority. The name was changed to the Port of Authority of New York and New Jersey in 1972 to reflect the involvement of both states in the region's trade and commerce. The two states authorized their new joint agency to buy, build, lease, and operate transportation and/or terminal facilities and other facilities of commerce within the port district. The Port Authority was also charged with the responsibility of promoting the commerce of the port and to protect it from inequitable or discriminatory transportation charges and practices, to make recommendations to the state legislatures for new and improved transportation facilities and better ways of doing business, and to petition the government regulatory agencies for improvement and changes which would speed and simplify the handling of commerce in the port district. Sent into the Roaring '20s with only startup funds for administration, the Port Authority struggled through its first few years, but maritime activity at the Port of New York was good. World War I had ended, and the region was jubilant. In those days, the transatlantic liners were the darlings of the port and the press. Newspaper reporters met the ships and took cheesecake photographs of the stage and screen stars returning from abroad. Lighters laden with freight dotted the harbor all day long. Shipments through the port included not only surplus war material seized from defeated foreign armies, but thousands of tons of consumptive goods. The people were living in high style, and they traveled in high style. To meet the challenge posed by the steadily rising vehicular traffic, the New York-New Jersey Bridge and Tunnel Commission opened Holland Tunnel in 1927, and the Port Authority constructed the Outer Bridge Crossing and the Goethals Bridge in 1928. From that time on, the Port Authority found itself blazing new trails in transportation. Next, we head to the 1930s, and here we see a 1930s Willys 6 coupe built by Willys Overland, which sold for $500. In 1930, two states gave the Port of New York Authority control of the newly opened Holland Tunnel, and the takeover and operation of the facility provided a fixed means of linking New York with industrial New Jersey and gave reality to the promise that the two states would agree and to pledge to each other faithful cooperation in the future planning and development of the Port of New York. But the young organization couldn't foresee the devastating effects of the Great Depression, that unprecedentedly severe economic crisis of the 30s. The high-style living of the 20s had its consequences. Overproduction of goods and easy money policies resulted in overexpansion of credit and fantastic speculation in the stock market. The tariff and war debt policy that curtailed foreign markets for American goods only aggravated the situation. As the Depression set in, it became evident that vehicular traffic, the cornerstone of Port Authority operations, would suffer, and so would revenues. At the depth of the Depression in 1933, 16 million people, one-third of the labor force, were unemployed. The policies of the New Deal administration relieved the situation somewhat, but complete recovery came only with the heavy defense spending of the 40s. But the young agency plowed on. In 1931, it constructed the George Washington and Bayonne bridges. Union Railroad Freight Terminal No. 1, more commonly known as Port Authority Building, was completed in 1932, and the first tube of the Lincoln Tunnel was built in 1937. The region's business, labor, and political communities were seeking new ways to escape the Depression. Someone had a bold idea. A World's Fair would be sited on Queens, New York, which was then known as Corona Dumps. The bold idea was embraced, and on April 30th, 1939, the New York World's Fair officially opened its gates, commemorating the 150th anniversary of George Washington's inauguration. In 1939 to 40, the World's Fair was responsible for the shipping of over $100 million worth of international treasures through the port and the attendance of thousands of first-time visitors to the American shores. And on a trip to the World's Fair, you could temporarily step out of the Depression and enter a world of visionary panoramic relief. Next, we'll head to the 1940s, which saw World War II. The demands of World War II overshadowed the port in the 40s. Movement of ships and cargo, construction of new facilities, and changes in port procedures were matters of strategic rather than commercial importance. Paramount was the great task of safety, shipping vital supplies overseas, and assuring a continuous flow of essential materials to and from the defense industries. Although there was a substantial increase in the volume of export-import cargoes moving through the port during the war, the character of these cargoes had changed radically. Exports were almost entirely specialized movements of war materials to U.S. and Allied armed forces overseas. Imports were almost exclusively priority commodities. The major portion of shipping activity was carried out under military and other government supervision. This resulted in highly concentrated operations centered on a few terminals handling specialized cargoes. In this effort, the Port Authority cooperated with the United States Army and Navy, the Maritime Commission, and the Office of Defense Transportation, and local government agencies and transportation companies. While the immediate risk was the efficient and continuous functioning of port facilities under abnormal shipping conditions, the long-range goal was to ensure a stable base for port commerce when the war terminated. With the end of hostilities in 1945, the Port Authority returned to the peacetime work of developing and protecting the commerce and welfare of the port. In 1948, it assumed operations for Port Newark, and since the end of the war saw the growth of trucking as the main carrier of cargo, Port Newark, because of its proximity to major interstate highways leading north, south, and west, was ideally located to become a major cargo handling facility at the port. Next, we'll head into the 1970s. Here we see the CVA-59 USS Forrestal. "200 years of freedom. What a reason to celebrate." And celebrate they did at the New York, New Jersey port on the weekend of July 4th, 1976. It was America's official 200th birthday. The most dramatic of the bicentennial festivities was Operation Sail, an international parade of tall ships and some 225 smaller vessels representing over 30 nations. Just as exciting was the United States Navy International Naval Review, a fleet of more than 50 naval ships led by the 80,000-ton aircraft carrier USS Forrestal. That night, a brilliant display turned the sky into a vast sea of bursting color to the wonder and delight of millions on shore and abroad, to several thousand pleasure craft that dotted the harbor. They set off from several locations around the harbor, and fireworks exploded simultaneously from Brooklyn and Governor's Island across to Liberty Island. Shower upon shower of red, white, and blue streamed down from the sky on this grand finale to a most memorable day. During the weekend celebration, most of the participating ships proceeded to various piers in New Jersey City, Port Newark, Hoboken, Brooklyn, and Manhattan, where they were open to the public. In Manhattan, several ships tied up at the passenger ship terminal and an ultra-modern cruise ship facility opened by the Port Authority in 1974, and midshipmen from many of the vessels were also participated in the parade up Broadway in Lower Manhattan. Few, if any, occasions in America's history would match the scope and celebration that took place on the port of New York and New Jersey that day in 1976. Next, we'll head to the 1980s. By the beginning of the decade, the Port of New York and New Jersey found itself handling more general and containerized cargo than any other single port in the United States. Spread out over 750 miles of waterfront, its 5 modern marine terminal facilities handle over 2 million 20-foot equivalent units, or TEUs, and 62 million tons of international bulk, bread bulk, and containerized cargo annually. In terms of value, this cargo accounts for more than 1/6 of the total U.S. ocean-borne foreign freight. The largest terminal on the New York side, Howland Hook Container Terminal, sited on over 150 acres, is capable of handling over 200,000 containers per year. To the east is New York City's South Brooklyn Marine Terminal, consisting of 110 acres, and further north is the Brooklyn Port Authority Marine Terminal, which includes the bustling 80-acre Red Hook Container Terminal, capable of handling 70,000 containers, or an estimated 1 million tons of cargo annually. On the East Jersey side is Global Marine Terminal on the Bayonne, Jersey City Peninsula, which encompasses 100 acres. It's the port's largest privately owned container facility. Also located on that peninsula is Port Authority's New Auto Marine Terminal, a $50 million, 138-acre facility exclusively dedicated to the handling and accommodation of motor vehicles coming to the port from points of manufacture all over the world. The Port Authority's 2,100-acre Port Newark Elizabeth Marine Terminal Complex is the leading port facility in the United States for the importation of goods and commodities. The Elizabeth facility is often referred to as the container capital of the United States, and the Port Newark is the scene of a variety of containerized and bread bulk activity. Two of the port's unique strengths are the frequency of arrivals and the departure of ships that call their facilities, and its tremendous intermodal capability, which makes second morning delivery possible to 79 million customers throughout the country. Because of superior services and a natural geographic advantage, nearly 100 regularly scheduled steamship lines do business with the port, offering direct service to other major ports all around the globe. The port is also linked to inland points by a vast network of expressways and railway connections, making it a primary distribution center for commercial goods and industrial supplies. 15,000 truck deliveries are made daily by over 10,000 trucks serving all points in North America, and 85 freight trains and 15 intermodal trains arrive each day. To ensure that shippers and industries serving the region are able to meet the next century with a keen competitive edge, the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey continues to invest large sums of money for the renovation and improvement of marine cargo facilities in both New York and New Jersey. These programs include major dredging projects to deepen the channels around the harbor so that they can more efficiently accommodate the drafts of newer, larger container vessels that call daily at the port's facilities. Next, we'll take a look at just a couple of ship displays and models. This is the General Dynamics LNG, or liquid natural gas ship. This is the SS United States. This is a model of the RMS Media and Parthia, and bear in mind these are huge models, and there are many, many dozens of amazing models. This is the Robert G. Stone tug, and a model of the CVS 60, and control panels. And there was also a wonderful sprawling library at the museum. Remember, this is the museum is part of the Maritime College. And the the Brooklyn Naval Shipyard of World War II was a model replica of the shipyard from 1942 to 1944, with various ships in under repair. This was the largest of the diorama and models at the museum, sprawling and amazing in its detail and scope, showing you what it was like in that era. And the museum, it was really well worth a visit, sprawling and amazing with hundreds, maybe thousands of exhibits, and be sure to give yourself a half day to, at least, to visit the museum. So thank you for watching this video, I hope you'll check out some of the other travelogue videos that I have, and have a great day.